Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the FIDE Candidates 2022. 8 players, 14 rounds, and after 10 of them have been played, Jan Nepomniachtchi leads with 7 points out of 10. He is trailed by Fabiano Caruana, Ding Liren, and Hikaru Nakamura with 5.5 points as they all try to stop that man from being the next candidate to rematch Magnus Carlsen for the World Championship title. Today's storyline is a very interesting one, as last night, Alireza Firouzja was seen playing against Daniel Neraditsky in a 250-game hyper-bullet match, which went on until 6 a.m. in Spain. Yeah, you heard that right. You can let me know your thoughts on that in the comments below. You can see the quality of the game later. Was Alireza a genius or was he a lunatic? And before we jump into the games today, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN, or a virtual private network, which allows you to encrypt your connection to the internet so you can browse it privately and anonymously. There are many reasons why you would use a VPN. Number 1, browsing anonymously is a huge relief when it comes to advertisements following you around based on what you've searched, and also keeping your passwords and personal identity safe on the web. Number 2, if you like traveling, then you can set your VPN to a country with friendlier airline pricing. And then when you get to that destination that you bought the cheaper pricing with using this exact same VPN, you can access certain sensitive portals like your bank if you have to, using that internet at the hotel that you're staying at, but you'll feel a peace of mind. And number 3, the fan favorite, watching your favorite shows on your favorite streaming sites. For some reason, some copyright issues or otherwise, certain shows are removed from certain catalogs based on where you are in the world. Let's say you want to watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia or The Office. Connect the VPN that you got in this ad read to the UK, and now you have access to those things. And Surfshark is a super user-friendly VPN. They keep you in mind. First of all, you can use it on an unlimited number of devices, which is something other VPNs can't promise you. And second of all, they offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked. You sign up for Surfshark, you absolutely hate it for whatever reason, you're gonna get a full refund. No elaboration necessary. So get started with Surfshark today. Look, folks, you know how this goes. Click that link in the description. You get 83% off and 3 free months. And if you sign up in June, they throw in antivirus at no extra cost. Let's get back to the video. This is Timur Rajaba versus Jan Krzysztof Duda. These guys are not in contention to win the entire thing, as Jan is about 3 to 2.5 points ahead of them, but you know, it's yet to be determined what's going to happen as Rajabov plays c4, and we have something known as kind of a Neo-Catalan ready fusion. You know, like this is the Neo-Catalan with these pieces and no d4, and with the b pawn defending the c4 pawn. We get there, but first we have the bishop fianchettoing on the queen side. So a very non-confrontational opening by Rajabov, who clearly did not want to out-prepare Duda in whatever he was going to be playing in the Petrov. And I don't think we've even seen Duda face many d4s in this event. I honestly don't remember, but I don't think so. I feel like every time we see Duda, it's e4, e5. So we have a relatively tame opening. Rajabov takes on d5. Knight d5 and takes the center with the move d4, castles, and now we have the move c5. So very quickly, we have absolute symmetry, like in terms of the pawns, right? Like d and c pawns have been traded on both sides. It's a cluster of 4 and 2, 4 and 2, with fianchetto over here. The major imbalance, of course, being these pieces. We saw Ding Liren play a very nice game against Duda a little while ago, maybe 2 rounds ago, where slowly but surely he just put his knight in the middle, he traded these bishops, and he got like good long-term pressure. But Rajabov in this game will need to kind of will really need to kind of like get moving on that plan as we have knight bd7, right, and we see knight e5. So in a similar fashion, he's playing the same way that Ding Liren did in that game. The only issue here is that black is very active. The difference is like the bishop is quite strong. Black isn't really restricted, and white's pawns are also advanced. So if black moves up and white is already moved up, there are some questions being asked here of the white position that are not really answerable. You know, if white got, like, again, if white got a couple more moves and got a rook to d1 and a rook to c1 and got something like this, then white is actually in business. White actually has a degree of pressure, right? Just by moving up and bringing the rooks behind. But with the queen on her home square, it's not easy to do anything. And if the queen was to move up, then black would very simply play knight e5, probably trade the queens immediately and say, no, you can't have anything. And that's what actually happens. We have a trade of knights, and then we have a trade of queens, and we have knight a5. Now, knight a5 is kind of a temporary advantage in the sense that after rook takes a5, there is the move b4. So you fork. And if black moves the rook back and, gets into this position or gets this kind of symmetrical structure, the bishop could be better than the knight. The best example of that is something like this, where the knight cannot move forward whatsoever. And, this pawn is going to be under fire and black can't really get the rook into the game, right? So instead of that, after b4, Duda does it like this. So his knight is able to activate, is able to plant on a4, and these pawns cancel out. I've talked about this multiple times over the course of the candidates. Sometimes in certain positions, two pawns just cancel each other out. And if those pawns get traded, you know what I mean? It's going to be 4-4. No one's really winning that position. Well, that's sort of what happens in this game. I mean, Rajabov does have a nice-looking position, but the pawns fall. And yeah, I mean, if one of these guys won this game, it would be more impressive that the other guy lost it than the guy that won it. All right, and if you played this position, you might lose with white and with black. Anyway, I'm gonna drink the rest of my Spindrift, not sponsored by the way, and I'm gonna click through and yep, stuff happens and pieces get traded and they repeat moves. Okay, but that was an appetizer game. Now it's time for the main course. One of the two main courses that you're going to split with the person you're eating with. Actually, I apologize. Yeah, fine. Let's stick to this game. So, Fabiano Caruana is playing with white versus Ding Liren. Buckle up. All right? Buckle up. Ding always plays e4, e5, and Fabiano plays a Spanish. Ding plays a classical Spanish with the bishop going to e7. We saw a couple of games ago, b5 and bishop c5. This is what Ding Liren chose to play against Report, but in this case, we have a very classical mainline Spanish. Now, Ding, you'll notice, does not move the d-pawn. That is because Ding loves the Marshal. Now, I don't know if he would have played the Marshal in this game, because the Marshal has a lot of forced draw lines. He might have, because it is his repertoire. Not forced draw, but like there's lines that, white can sort of bail out of this counterplay and survive, and just be a pawn up and... But in this game, Caruana plays a4. This is known as the anti-marshal. If you have a keen eye and a good memory and a big heart, then you probably remember the games between Jan Nepomniachtchi and Magnus Carlsen from the World Championship match. And in that match, rather than playing bishop b7, which is the ultra-popular main line, rook b8 is what Magnus chose, which is not a popular move order, and Jan was unable to crack his Spanish. So, bishop b7, right? d3, d6, and now you've sort of forced Ding Liren into playing a non-Spanish, a non-martial, right? He has a pawn on d6, he hasn't opened up the center, but Ding comes guns blazing here with b4 and c5, so he's taking some space. Fabiano rotates the knight to g3, and here in the database there have been 5 or 6 games. All of them have gone in a way different than this game. So, knight f5 was played, trying to get the bishop. In this game, Fabiano plays the move knight to h4. Now, the point of knight to h4 is obviously that he wants to go to g6 and sneak in and take the rook, not being noticed by these two pawns. If you do not have a sarcasm meter, the idea is to go to f5 with this knight. So he's not going to f5 with the g knight, he's going to go to f5 with that knight. So he plays knight h4, and Ding plays the move g6. Fabiano here immediately goes to attack the rook, because that looks like a very nice idea, and plays this ultra-aggressive move, knight h to f5. It's a beautiful move. The point is that if you take my knight, I will take back, and black's king is completely naked. Like, I'm talking, like, explicit naked, all right? Queen d2, queen g5 is on the way, queen f3, queen g3 is on the way. The king, the word, he can't hide, all right? Because I check you right back to that square, and then the attack just continues, all right? Like, you will not survive this attack. So it's a very interesting idea, right? I mean, and that's why Ding kind of moves out of the way here. And this is Fabi's opportunity here to pose some serious questions to the black position. And what does he do? He follows the path. He jumps directly in front of the king. Now, that looks completely absurd. That looks absurd because even though you attack the rook can just move, like over here, right? And if you go back, you're going to repeat moves. So maybe, instead of going to g7 right away, you can try to improve your position with something like knight to e3, just kind of monitoring if black can ever expand in the center. Right, the move d5, that's what the knight is kind of brought there for. As things open up, we would have a big trade. The white knight would end up on e4 after everything. The queen would be able to come out. So, but Fabi decides, no. I'm going to improve my situation over here. I'm going to prevent knight g4. Ding Liren, what are you going to do to me? I'm going to win this game. Here, Ding plays an awesome move, okay? Ding here feeds Fabiano a poisonous fruit. Not like actually, he didn't like reach over the table and give him like an apple or a peach, because Fabi would have been like, the heck is wrong with you? Ding plays the move b3. That's an amazing move, because it loses a pawn completely. But what's going to happen here is you either completely mummify your bishop on a2, right? And I go knight c6 and then knight b4 and good luck ever moving. Your best move might literally be to open the bishop back up. Or you give me the bishop completely, like this, but now your pawn structure is in ruins. Neither of these pawns is going to be able to move forward, and Ding will have permanent pressure on the b file. This bishop was extremely important to harass the black king, and now it's completely gone. So Ding has fed Fabiano a poisonous apple, and now Fabiano is on the verge of potentially losing 2 pieces, because those pieces went in with a mission, and that mission was not to die without any sort of results. Okay, those pieces are stuck. The only chance that Fabi has here is to use this knight as a decoy. You know, make sure it gets taken. Bishop comes down to f8, for example. Now, of course, Ding could move to g8. The thing about that, though, is if the knight is able to grab the bishop, this trade is really good for white. White rescues the bishop immediately and has a very nice position here because white is still a pawn up, let's not forget. So that doesn't happen. Ding does this, and here there's a very nice tactic as this bishop stands unguarded in the enemy territory. White has to deal with 2 threats. Folks, if you're faced with the option of losing a full bishop or a rook for a bishop, save the full bishop. You do not want to lose a full piece of material. So we have this, and this. And now we begin kind of that late middle game, end game phase, all right? 6 pawns each, opposite colored bishops, very imbalanced pawn structure, weaknesses abound. Fabiano's queen goes for a walk on the queen side as she's looking to make some sort of damage over there. Knight g8 kicks out the bishop. Bishop back to b7, queen d2, f6, and now Fabiano opens up a front of attack over there as he has stabilized his position and maybe can go, you know, cause some problems here. Ding has a lot of pawns on dark squares. That's really appetizing for a dark squared bishop that isn't blocked in, right? So f4, f5 is all possible. We have ef4, bishop f4, and I mean, Ding is really playing with fire here. Like, this whole plan of removing a center bastion, you know what I mean? Like, you gotta keep the center pawn, right? Like, that center pawn is really nice. If you're not going to keep the center pawn, you might want to get the queen involved to target some stuff, all right? And Ding does it this way. He does this, kicks out the bishop, and goes here. And that attacks the knight and attacks the pawn on b2. But Ding has made a horrible mistake, because here Fabiano uncorks knight f5. And it turns out this pawn is not hanging at all, because of the absolutely incredible idea, rook b2, knight d6. And if you take the queen, it's a fork, and I win this, and then your rook is still hanging, the pawn is defended, and if rook to e2, knight c4, and black is much worse here. This pawn is hanging, the rook is trapped. The rook only has a2 to go to, and by then I'll get in and I'll take everything. So he must have missed that, because now after knight e7, knight takes e7, queen c2 to kick the rook out, white is better. White is better because black's bishop is eating granite, and white just has beautiful targets. f6, sitting duck. d6, sitting duck. c5, also a sitting duck. I mean, if a sitting duck is defending another sitting duck, they're both sitting ducks by the laws of syllogism. That's P implies Q, Q implies R. Although maybe, I don't know. Anyway, king g7, a5, and both players have made the 40th move. So now they get that extra hour. Fabiano's got a beautiful position. He is the only one who can win this game. He must be feeling really good. Fabi, show us how it's done. He's gonna have to rely on some pawn breaks, right? He's gonna have to loosen up the position a little bit, like split the pawns up. You know, that's really something he wants. And there he goes with b4, takes, and boom. Look at, oh my god, the open file. Rook b6 is coming down, so Ding has to not allow the rook to get close, right? So we have hg, queen f5, Fabi's doing everything right. And now d4, let's crack that center open again. All right, Ding plays bishop d3, interesting idea. Allowing the rook a passage in, but e4 is weak, so I have to go defend my pawn. Now we trade, and now Ding is playing this very intelligently. He's like, all right, Fabiano's best piece is his queen. So I should trade it. And Fabiano is like, my best piece is my queen, so I should not trade it. And we have this position. And Fabiano continues to try to wreck Ding's position, right? If you play fe5, queen d5, I always like to say, the attacking side is favored in opposite colored bishops. Here's why. Because what is that bishop doing? Black is desperately defending the king from an attack on the dark squares, and this bishop's like, I only see the light squares, woohoo! Like, that bishop doesn't, like, he's adorable, but he's not, he can't help, you know what I mean? He's like, yeah, you just sit over there. All right, shh. Here's like a cup of juice, all right? Just have some apple juice, be quiet, leave us all alone, right? Let's do business, right? Like the goofy brother in The Godfather, I think. I forgot his name. So, you know, it's a problem. This is a really big problem. And Fabiano continues to land these massive haymaker checks. Look at this. Queen f7, e6. The pawn comes in with tempo. e7, discover check. King g7. But luckily, now that bishop actually has a role. It's preventing the pawn from moving forward. Bishop d4, queen to f4, bishop e3, queen g3. We're not going to have a repetition of moves, right? Rook h8. And all of a sudden, it's like, wait a minute. What happened? I thought Fabi was the one attacking. He did everything right, it seemed. Well, it turns out, no. It actually turns out Ding Liren was defending extremely well. If you go back about 15 moves, maybe Fabi had to be a little bit more patient. Like, maybe in this position after this trade, there was a slightly different approach to the position. Maybe it wasn't rook b1 and d4 as he played. You know, maybe it was going, for example, to the h5 square. This is another, you know, plan. And then maybe rook f3. Like, Fabi went that way with the rook, but maybe he had to focus on the king side, you know? What ends up happening is Ding defends super well. And even though it looks like everything Fabi's doing is right, by the 60th move of the game, as Fabi promoted a queen to deflect one of his pieces away to go queen e7, the players made move 60, and Fabi's down a pawn. Like, Fabi's just straight up down a pawn. He threw all the pawns at his opponent, and Ding was like, yup, I'm defending. And, well, now Fabi's defending. I mean, Fabi is just a pawn down in an opposite color bishop and rook and queen endgame. Ding continues to make threats. Now, the way you draw this with white, it's important to understand how you draw endgames. Remove the queen and the rook. You trade these queens and rooks. The bishop 2, bishop 3, opposite color endgame is just an auto draw, okay, at that level. But trade just the queens, not necessarily a draw, because the rook will come down, right? The rook and the bishop are going to try to team up. And Fabiano has to make sure that he prevents that from happening. He needs a little bit of activity, and he needs to repel the black forces from getting down to the e2 square. So, for example, the fly just flew all over the place. Black wants to bring the bishop like this and play, you know, something like over here. If you play bishop b6 here and I play bishop d3, you see how you failed to prevent this? And if you go rook e1, you would think I don't want to make this trade because Levy just said that, right? But suddenly you're losing g2. Like, it's crazy. You are in the worst possible situation. So rook e7, rook c3, Ding Liren misses a beautiful knockout, which is bishop d3. Can't take because the rook endgame is also losing for white. But Ding misses it. Now we have g3, bishop d3, and apparently Stockfish was claiming that white can hold this position, but this is not the way. Because now after, oh, sorry, no, this is still okay. This is not the way. The white rook needs to protect the second rank and not the bishop together. Like the white rook needed here to go, for example, rook c2. And if rook d8 attacks the bishop runs away. And if the bishop is attacked again, the bishop runs away. And if the bishop is attacked again, the bishop runs away. But the way Fabi coordinated here, suddenly this happens. And white is in the Zugzwang, which is a situation where no matter what you move, you lose. He can't move anything. He can't move two of his pawns. He can't move his king because, well, I mean, he could go king g1, but then he would lose in the same kind of way. No matter what he moves, the rook is coming down. And that's exactly what happens. And Fabi could have defended this a little bit more tenaciously, but Ding Liren has now won 3 games in a row. Ding Liren has 6.5 points. That's crazy. Oh my gosh. He has won 3 games in a row. I mean, this man has caught fire. Ding now wants to look over there and see what happens in the game between Hikaru and Report, right? Because if Hikaru wins, he's also in second place with Ding. And yes, of course, Nepo Alireza is coming, right? So Report plays the Sveshnikov Sicilian. I don't know When's the last time Report has played the Sveshnikov Sicilian? Sveshnikov Sicilian is one of the most theoretically dense, absurd openings that exists. Report must have just been like, you know what? I don't want to play the Taimanov. He played it 3 times in this event with some success, but decides we are going to play a main line, an ultra main line variation of the Sveshnikov. Now, there are 2 moves on move 11, C3 as well as C4. These are both very kind of common ideas. C3 is a little bit more restrained, not allowing black to do this. And now white chooses between a handful of game plans, but the knight rotating is a major one. White has this strong bastion outpost on the d5 square. Maybe can play g3, h4 to negate the movement of this bishop. Black's game plan involves advancing on the queen side, trading off the knight on d5, and maybe playing for a future f5 break. Okay, so let's see that. All right, so there we go. The bishop has cleared out. Hikaru fianchettos the bishop on g2, and here's Report preparing either one of these advancements as well as knight e7. f5 right now is a little bit loose because the knight is sort of hanging in a lot of lines, and white could get like a pretty clear advantage here by just following their own game plan, as these pawns sort of just float in the middle, and this initiative is, you know, queen b3 is coming, knight f5. Oh, no, well, queen e2 is actually not a bad move, but, you know, a lot of light squared weaknesses here, and this bishop kind of does nothing. So we have knight e7, which is what I mentioned, trade, and now knight f5, and that pawn on d6 is given away by Report. He just offers an exchange of queens and saves his bishop, and we have this position. Now, if you count the pawns, black has 1 pawn less, straight up. However, the position is equal. The position is equal because for that 1 pawn less, black has people who are going to rob the bank over here on the queen side. I mean, like, white just is not able to defend against the bishop and the incoming pawns. This bishop on g2 is like that bishop in that earlier game. I mean, that bishop is adorable, but absolutely not participating in any useful manner. We have a4, right? Rook d1, so a trade, and this endgame. So there you go. Immediately the pawn has been won back. These pawns cancel out, right? So rook b1, bishop a2, rook b2, bishop 2 e6, and Hikaru plays bishop f3. The idea of bishop f3 is to trade the light square bishop off to get this endgame, which is a very nice idea. You know, like there's a big difference here between getting to this endgame, which is opposite colored bishops and an auto draw, and this endgame, which is, you know, if I get my knight to d5, I have a great knight and you have a garbage bishop, right? So, not garbage, but my knight is much better than your bishop. This pawn, however, cannot really be taken. So, for example, if I play h5 here, then after knight e5, bishop f6, there's that. And if you say, well, there's knight c6, yeah, but then there's rook c8. You say, well, Levy, there's a fork, stupid. Yeah, but then I take here. Yeah, but Levy, then I play this move. Yeah, but then I play rook d8 and it's danger levels. So you would need to know that this endgame is a draw for black, right? Instead of this, Report does something really funny here. He plays b4 and then plays rook b5. So he doesn't take the pawn back. Like, he basically leaves the pawn there to die. And then tries to boot out Hikaru's knight so it doesn't target this. So Hikaru sacks the pawn. He wants a really damaged structure here, right? Instead of that, we have rook b4 and just an endgame of full pawn down. And Report's like, I'm gonna draw this. I don't think you can beat me here. The way white would win this endgame, let's say no one's gonna lose a pawn. The only way that black would somehow mess this up is if black put the pawns all on the wrong squares. So like if black allowed the white knight to just be like just a killer, you know, and lose this battle on the light squares, like allow this powerful, and even then, by the way, there's moves like bishop e1. So white needs to do a lot of things right here, and Hikaru tries, all right? He tries his darndest. Okay, you'll notice he doesn't trade pawns for a long time. He wants Report to take him. Of course, black should also not hang a fork. That's another thing I should say. Yeah, I'm gonna keep clicking the forward arrow. You know, this was a super long game, and Report did not hang a fork, you know. I'm gonna speed up now. Yeah, you know, chess got played. Like, there's intricacies here. For example, the move f4 by black. Not a very good decision because knight d5, I start moving to c4. The tension is very important for Report to keep here. Knight and pawn versus bishop is just a draw, because there's like no way for the bishop not to sacrifice itself for the remaining pawn. And that is basically what you are going to see. You're going to see Hikaru making moves, hoping Report blunders a fork. Shockingly, a 2764 rated player did not do that. And even though the pawn ran away, to e7. It got sacrificed for, and it was a 96 move game, but it ended with king and knight versus king. And unfortunately, even though Hikaru ended the game a piece up, he does not win. So Dingley Ren is in clear second place. And that sets up the final game of the day. Alireza Firouzja spent the entire night playing bullet against Daniel Naroditsky. 250 games. Let's see if he can make it count. We know that this is going to happen from Jan. I mean, Jan is in clear first. He's looking at the rest of the field going, damn, none of these bozos can catch me. Knight e5, d6. And Alireza does not play d4. And he does not play the classical line. I haven't seen this line played at all, by the way, in this event with DC. I guess it's been solved? I don't know. So c4, and then d3, and then d4. This is obviously a major sideline because why is white moving the d pawn twice, right? But it's a thing. It's a thing, and it's actually funny. You would think with black you want to play d5, but you don't, because then white goes here and has pressure, and white can even play a move like c5, which is kind of funny. And now the bishop can't develop, and if black tries to stay passive here, it's completely fine, but white can like prevent moves like b6 and slowly build up on the space. So we have bishop e7 and a completely new position as of move 9. So Firouzja just, dancing around here, and he wants to play bishop e2, castles. You'll notice black is congested. Well, I don't know. I mean, Jan drinks a lot of tea at the board. I don't know if he's congested or what, but black is congested in the middle. The bishop can't really move. The knights are sort of stuck, which means that black is going to play on the queen side. Black is probably going to move the c-pawn, bring the queen out this way, trade in the middle, and play rook c8, and, try to pressure over there. So he goes here first, gets kicked out, bishop e2, and now he expands on the queen side, because if you have a place to play with your pawns and take a little bit of space and bring out your queen and bring out your rook, you're probably going to do all of that, right? Terrific. So here, white can play the move f4, okay? That would drive the knight to c4, which white can then attack again. And here, Jan can sacrifice his knight and get an end trade that looks kind of like this. It's a very complicated position. White's got kind of ideas to target the queen on b6. Maybe white can play, of course, queen d. No, queen d2. Actually, there's knight e4. So yeah, I mean, probably bishop back to g1. And it's a complicated game. All right, it's just a complex position. Alireza thinks for about 15 minutes here and plays a move that, I mean, almost makes you think like he was maybe still in the bullet mode or something. He plays a super aggressive move, super aggressive. G4. G4. The idea of that move seems to be G5. So for example, like let's say black has A6, white will go G5. If black goes here, then there's F4, targeting this knight and this knight at the same time. So that's very nice for white. But what happens if black plays H6, completely preventing the move G5? I mean, certainly when you play G4, you've spent the time looking at what happens if black plays H6, right? Alireza spends like another 25 minutes here. It's like, it was unbelievable. I was like, wait a minute. I mean, I'm not at that level, The thing is, if you bail out on the G5 plan, then even a position like this with like really bad structure, I mean, even black is happy here, right? Like black can let all the initiative come his way. He always has king h8. He always has knight h7. Like this attack, there's nothing there, Like you want to play queen f1, queen g2, fine, bishop f6. f4, yeah. I understand, right? But he finally goes h4. This position is equal, 0, 0, 0. This position is minus 2.5. And Alireza is not slowing down. I mean, my man moved his king to h1 and then shot his g and h pawns forward. So Jan takes and goes here. Now if you play f4 to try to hit me here, I have a check. You used to have an h pawn, right? The original idea of g4, there was an h pawn on h2, so this didn't happen, right? So knight h5, king g2, and Jan just rotates the horses. They're going to the f4 square. So Alireza has to play f4 himself. If he doesn't play f4 himself, the knight will go to f4. f4. Jan takes it anyway. Because Jan has a ton of pieces ready to go. Literally all of his pieces, both bishops, both rooks, the queens, and both the knights. After bishop takes f4, the queen gallops into b2. Every single piece has been put on notice. Every single one of white's pieces, as the king is just out in the open like, what's up, everybody? I'm here. Ha ha. It's like that kid in hide and seek. You ever play hide and seek? And you got a kid like laughing. You're like, oh, you're an idiot. Now they're going to find you. It's the king. King's like, they're never going to find me. Why would you say that out loud? Knight to e4, a beautiful move. Rook c4. Look at this, just laser beam rook. The queen, the knight. We have bishop e3. Now, I mean, bishop g5. You can't take with either piece because all of your defenses crumble. Look at this. I mean, have you ever seen something like this? Every single piece is being like obliterated here. Every single piece. So we have this. Queen takes one more pawn for good measure. And now rook takes d4. Danger levels. Both queens hit. And he could sack the queen completely. Jan could have gone into a game where he sacrifices a queen, but instead he's like, nah, I'm gonna just take this, take this. What's the material count? Well, both sides have a knight and a bishop and a rook, right? You remove the knight, remove the bishop, remove the rook. But black has a bishop and 4 extra pawns after 28 moves of play. Alireza grabs on d6. Jan goes rook e7, bishop b3. And that proved to be the final error as the pieces swarmed the white king. And on move 35, he had to resign. Literally, he had to resign as the bishops and the rook butchered the king to death. For example, if you block the check like this, rook h3 is literally mate in 1. If you go to g1, I mean, we're not even gonna get started on all the discovered checks that win everything here. Jan Nepomniachtchi just won his 5th game of the candidates. Alireza stayed up till 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, playing a 250 game hyper bullet match. What is going on in this candidates? Jan is in first place with 8 out of 11. 8 out of 11 points. That is insanity. The only person who can catch him is Ding Liren, probably, with 6.5 now. Hikaru has 6. Maybe Hikaru can. And tomorrow, Hikaru plays Jan. Or 2 days from now. Hikaru's got the black pieces versus Jan Nepomniachtchi. Something's got to... I mean, I don't know what we just experienced. This round was complete nonsense. I don't know what your thoughts are on all this. Do let me know in the comments. But yeah, I mean, just crazy. I'll see you all in round number 12. Get out of here.